We all have so much enormous potential, and we're just limited by all these stories.
There's a business that's around, say, 19 million, but it's now being constrained by the skill level of the CEO.
When you start to scale, then leadership is the bottleneck. That is not about what you do so much as who you are. And it may not be that that person can make that shift.
I'm super excited, joined today by the author of Your Leadership Story, Deborah Henley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Creator of the Real Leadership Program, and you've also worked in your role as an exec coach with companies including Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, and the Ministry of Defence. Interesting mix.
Yep. I was a psychotherapist, and I worked with people in addiction recovery, which meant a massive identity shift. And for the last 15, 20 years, I've worked in leadership spaces. And it's the same sort of shift.
Why do you think that is? Is it fear that keeps people playing small?
Culture, and we're told this is how you survive in this environment. This is who you have to be in this environment to get by.
What is the story that you're telling yourself?
We can't see our stories because they look true to us. All that's happened is we've had events in our life, which are objective events. And then we have selected some and made meaning out of them and said that's who we are. We need to get what I call the human edge.
Okay.
Really building into our humanity. And that's so valuable. AI doesn't have that.
Talk to us about the real model and where it came from.
The current you doesn't know the solution, but the future you, who's in that end place, does. And you don't get there adjacently. You get there by leaping quantum leap. At any point, you can get out your real compass and ask yourself these 4 navigational points. So the first one is,
welcome along to this episode of the Grown Up Business Podcast, and I'm excited because we're going to have a conversation today about a topic that I don't think we talk enough about on the podcast, and I'm realising as we shift towards more and more AI and that becomes what everyone's talking about, that actually we are missing the opportunity to talk about leadership more and more and how you lead in this age of change and transformation. And therefore, I'm super excited to be joined today by the author of Your Leadership Story, incredible book, Deborah Henley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great to have you here. You are also, the book was a finalist in the Business Book Awards
in the leadership section.
Congratulations. You're the creator of the Real Leadership Program,
yes,
which we'll talk about.
Yes.
And you've also worked in your role as a leadership coach and exec coach with companies including Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, and the Ministry of Defence.
Yes.
Interesting mix.
Yep.
So let's just start by saying, in your view at the moment, how do you think? What's the biggest impact AI is having on leadership right now? Like, start there, and then let's unpack how you got to doing what you're doing.
Right. Well, AI, all technologies, everything that makes everything more efficient and effective and easy access to intelligence and strategies means that the majority can all advance at the same level.
Right.
So what becomes premium when there is an abundance of information and intelligence?
Good question.
Our human touch, our humanity. It's our ability to have relationships, our ability to have creative thinking.
Yeah.
Our ability to build a team, the ability to inspire, the ability to think differently, our curiosity. I sort of think that human beings have things that machines don't have.
Yes.
And more than ever, there's a premium to those things. Like there's a premium to experiences. We all know how important
100%.
it is to be in the same room as other people and
100%.
how much we get out of that. I mean, the pandemic showed us that, but the advance of AI is showing that even more. But also machines don't have curiosity. They don't care about the answer, They don't have care.
And it's not always correct either, right?
No, it's not always correct, yeah. They don't have compassion. Yeah. They don't have a real desire or energy. We think about building businesses and scaling businesses. Human beings have an ambition and we want to go somewhere, whereas a machine is just following the
protocol or what I mean, I think it's, I'd like your perspective on this. So I'm going to ask you this question because I think it's one which a lot of people kind of confuse. What is your definition of the difference between leadership and management?
Well, sometimes management is seen as being just about managing tasks and systems and structures. Managing people is often just making sure everybody does their right role. So it's almost being quite robotic as well. It's sort of making sure the system works at a human level.
Yeah.
Leadership is far more visionary. It's more long-term thinking.
Yeah.
It galvanizes people, and to my mind, it hooks people with their hearts and their minds.
Okay.
It's not just a question of doing the right thing and following protocol. If you think even of the word leadership, if we're leading ourselves, we are not just following preordained pathways.
Yeah.
Leadership is saying, well, what's a new way to take this?
Yeah.
How can I take this somewhere different?
And do you think, I think if you're listening to the podcast right now and you're thinking, you want to build a grown-up business, that's probably why you're listening to this, you want to scale, you want to grow, then leadership's going to be probably the constraint that kicks in at some point.
Yeah.
Because at some point you will need to build a team. Yes, you can get to a certain level with AI and outsourcing, but even then, I think there's a skill of leading outsourcers, right? Like you still need to learn how to lead. Even if I've got 5 I call them team members because they are team members, right? But they're based in the Philippines or South Africa or whatever.
Yeah.
But you've still got to lead them, right? They're not going to rock up every day and know what to do unless you give them some direction. So when did you first get sort of fascinated by this subject?
Oh, well, I just want to say something about just the bottleneck of leadership and then talk about that, because something just came up to while you were speaking there, which is with the growth business, it's all about strategies and it's all about what you do. And AI is fantastic for that. You can get all sorts of strategies and ideas from AI, efficiency.
Data, all that.
Yeah, and it's what you do. But at a scale, when you start to scale, then leadership is the bottleneck. Leadership is the thing that will make the difference. And that is not about what you do so much as who you are.
Yeah.
And who you're being in your relationships with your team. So we'll talk about team. And in your relationships with your customers, and in the way you portray yourself out there. I mean, more than ever, we need to get real. People see if you're in any sort of leadership position, you are visible.
Yes.
And as Dan Priestley talks about with his KPI programs and everything else, our profile matters.
Yeah.
And people get whether you're human.
Yes. Or I'm always surprised that when we run events and people, I've had it 2 or 3 times where people come up and they chat to me afterwards, and you've had this, I'm sure, as a keynote speaker yourself, where somebody comes up to you afterwards and go, "Oh wow, you're just like you are like on the podcast or on the stage, or you're the same." And I'm like, yeah, because it's really exhausting to try and be somebody different and then remember which version of me I was supposed to be. And I think there's that. I think there's a whole piece about, if you're going to be a leader, you've got to figure out how to be authentic, because it's very hard to keep trying to be what everyone else wants you to be. That's exhausting.
Yeah. Well, my mind's going off in a few different directions with this. One is around a talk that I gave recently to speakers about unlocking the genius of the genuine you. So, as it says in the title, the more genuine you are, the more you're tapping into your genius.
Yeah.
But the genius, and this applies to leaders and people scaling businesses as well, your genius lies, it's funny that I use the word lie, because the genius doesn't lie in lying. The genius lies in being genuine and true to yourself.
Yeah.
And in that intersection between being exactly who you are on stage and off, but also being aspirational.
You think?
Aspirational and relatable. So that.
Why aspirational? Unpack that for me.
Well, because we can sit here happy with our lives, but all business grows through a desire. There's an aspiration for it to grow and develop and expand. So
I call it aligned ambition. So if you talk about a team, the A in team for me is about aligned ambition.
Right.
Everyone's got to have an ambition for the, what's the ambition for the business? What are we trying to do?
Yeah.
And everyone needs to be aligned around that. So it's like, if you haven't got alignment, then you're going to have elements of the team going off doing different things, and that causes fragmentation and silos and issues. So it's like, there's got to be a level of aligned ambition. Right?
Yes.
Here's where we're trying to go. This is what we're trying to achieve, whether it's this quarter, this month, this year, there's an alignment on that piece. Otherwise, I think it's the difference between a light bulb and a laser. If everyone's aligned, it's like a laser beam. It can travel for miles and cut through just about any challenge you're going to face. Whereas if it's not aligned, it's like a light bulb. It can be bright, but it isn't going to go very far. You make a lot of noise, but you won't have a lot of impact.
Yeah, well, absolutely, being aligned is essential, and also we can think about being aligned within ourselves.
True.
You know, and that is the genius, because we really know where we're at and where we're going. Everything lines up, and you know, people talk. Csikszentmihalyi, the Hungarian
Right.
the psychologist, talks about flow. That's where the idea of flow comes from. And we're in a flow state when we're aligned,
Yes.
when there aren't little bits of us that are holding us back with doubts and worries. And but what I say about aspiration, though, and why that's so important, is because we can. I'll talk about an experience in my own life. I had a loss, which I'm happy to talk about. You know, sudden loss, but what it did was, I had been a very goal-focused person.
Right.
I had 10-year plans. I knew where I was going, and I wanted to be an Olympic gold medalist in rowing, and, you know, various things in my life, and I absolutely committed and worked really hard towards them. When I had that particular loss, which was a late miscarriage, expecting a baby, what happened was my future stopped. So I went from expecting to sort of not knowing, not having any faith in the future.
Right.
And then what happened for a period of time was I stopped aspiring after goals.
Right.
So I stopped having any ambition, and I stayed in the present. I mean, in many ways, there were a great value to that. I learned about presence in the present, but there was also a fear of the future. And if you are growing a business, or you have ambition, you want to achieve things, you want to scale, then you have to. There's almost a bit of there's a question of faith. You have to be prepared to take to look into the future and to move towards that future and to align yourself with it, even if it doesn't work out for you. You know,
100%. I mean, I think there's a constant battle if you're running a business between fear and faith. There's a constant. That's the constant thing. It's like you need enough paranoia to make sure you don't run out of cash. Don't break the laws. You know, all of that kind of thing. You need an element of that. But you also have to have a faith in the future unseen at the moment, because that's what you're building. You're creating it. 9 times out of 10. It's just an idea in your head that you're trying to manifest and bring about and bring into reality. And therefore, there's this constant tension, I think. You know, I sort of talk about and play with the word intention.
Yes.
And I sort of spell it incorrectly.
Okay.
Because I will spell it INTEN as intention. TION.
Intention,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
nice,
so I spell it as almost like intention. And the first time I did it, somebody said, you spelt it incorrectly. And I was like, oh, that could be because I'm dyslexic, or it could just be because I see it as tension. Because I think when you have an intention, something inside of you that you want to do, there is now a friction between between who you are now and the person you are going to need to become to achieve that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because I think when you have, firstly, thank you for sharing that story about a personal story like that. But I think it's like a trauma response, isn't it?
Yes,
like when you have a trauma response, you just go stop.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I need to just survive. And there's that whole kind of like, people talk about fight or flight, but they don't tend to talk a lot about the freeze piece of it.
Yeah. And it's a freeze in time. It's a mental freeze, because I can't trust the future.
Right.
But I love that idea of being in tension, because what I've noticed in the work that I've done with leaders, particularly around goal setting subsequently, because now I'm all about goals in the future, you know, doing stuff for my future self, helping people do stuff for their future self. I know that you're also a fan of Dr. Ben Hardy and his work.
Yes, and Brian Mill, who's on the show, who did an amazing podcast all about goal mapping and the neuroscience behind that, and the fact that most people are setting goals in the wrong way.
Yeah, right. Well, so what I'd say about intention, there's a really interesting difference I started to notice with people who were likely to achieve their goals. And I would ask them, what's your intention? You know, what would you like to have happen? And they would say what they wanted. And then I say, well, what do you expect to have happen? So there's a difference between intention and expectation.
Nice.
As soon as the expectation lines up, then you know you're onto a winner. Because if you expect something to happen, you've rearranged everything so that it's the most likely pattern to fulfill itself.
Yeah.
So so moving from intention to expectation is a really fantastic sort of pivot moment to success.
I like that. I think, so if I link it back to a story that a client of mine told me recently, we were talking about sort of law of attraction, and I'm a big believer that there are universal principles that you can apply to a business, right? And one of them happens to be that you need to create space. And he was telling two stories, but I'll just tell one for now. But one of them, he was telling it at one of our CEO lunches, and he was saying, I looked at the business I had and I was like, I want to attract more A-grade clients, but I don't have any space for them if they turn up because the team is already really busy.
Right.
So what they did was they went and sort of released the bottom 20% of their client base. They basically said, listen, really sorry, can't look after you anymore. We can refer you to other people, but we're going to let... Now, that sounds... If you just say 20%, it doesn't sound particularly like it was a big decision, but in terms of what it represented to that business, it was about 25% of their annual turnover or something like that. It was a big number, right? It was millions of pounds of funds under management because they're in the financial services sector. Yeah. Now, what was interesting, and he said at that point, when you've made that decision, that's when you're living in that intention space, because there's a tension now between, I kind of hope it all shows up. There's that little bit of like, I'm trusting the universe, but there's a part of me that's going, I hope I'm right trusting the universe.
Yeah. But what you've done by doing that is you've raised your standards.
Right.
And you've raised your floor. You've said, you've
created space too, right? You've created space.
You've created space, and you've also said, I'm not, everything below that line is not acceptable for us. So that's not where we play.
No, exactly that. It's an identity shift, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Which I want to talk to you about. But what was interesting was that he said within 3 months they had attracted over, so if you just use numbers, I won't use exact numbers, but because it's not fair, but like as an example, if it was 25 million they let go of, they'd attracted 100 million. So it's like they had essentially 4x their result. Yeah. Because he'd gone, all right, look, I'm really clear on what I do want, and I need to create space for that to manifest. Yeah. And I think sometimes there is that dance, and I think it's okay to dance between fear and faith. And sometimes I think, I've got to be positive all the time. Well, okay, but you still need to have a healthy dose of paranoia about, well, what if it goes wrong? How would I handle that? What if that doesn't work? What's my backup plan?
It's reality. It's a good reality check, isn't it? It's just not delusional.
It's like if you don't have 3 months of cash in the business and there's a challenge and the world shuts down or COVID happens or whatever, then suddenly you're out of business because you didn't have a plan of like, well, if there was a black swan event, how are we going to be okay? And I think there's that dance. I think it is a dance between, I want to have ambition and faith and that we can achieve anything we want, but there's also just a little bit of like, but if for some reason something happened I didn't have control of, am I going to be okay? Like, can I weather the storm?
Well, one of the things I mean, that's something really dear to my heart, because one of the things you didn't mention in my intro was my podcast, Perfectly Flawed,
which I've had the privilege of being on.
And I've had the pleasure of having you.
Yeah, we'll link. It was a great conversation, actually. We'll link to it underneath the show notes.
Yeah, and how this relates to what we're talking about here is that Perfectly Flawed is about this whole encapsulation of who we are.
Right.
Just both the dark and the light, the good and the bad, the stuff in life that we don't want to have had happen, and the stuff we do, how all of those things are really valuable. So all the things that people try and push away, or they say, I don't like this difficulty, or I don't like this challenge, actually, if we embrace it, we can find that the things that happen in our business that we didn't want to happen can sometimes be the greatest opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
And that's the Perfectly Flawed philosophy, is that the things that we don't immediately like or accept or don't line up with who we are force us to change our identity or our business model or our structure and take us somewhere new. And that's what's so exciting. So
but in the moment it doesn't feel that, does it? I was having a call with somebody in the last couple of sort of days, and he was telling me the story about how the business he had been working in for a long time, like 20 years or so, they brought in a new sort of CEO, and that CEO, for whatever reason, took a dislike to him, and it was tantamount to bullying, I would say. It wasn't far off that.
Yeah.
And then he just got to the point where he went, well, I don't want this. I'm going to go out on my own.
Yeah.
And then he's gone on to build a multi-million-pound business on his own. And I go, so that person was like the universe's way of sending you something to go, you need to leave now. This is like, you've got to get out of this, because I can't take you to a better place. I can't take you to create this new incredible vehicle you're going to build if you keep staying on the payroll of that company. So you're not embracing that risk yet. So you're going to make it really painful for you to stay here. And he thought about it, and he went, that's probably what happened, but at the time it was horrifically horrible. And I said, "Oh, I get that. I get like
you've got to have compassion for like the process isn't always nice, and it can be very painful.
It's painful.
Yeah.
It's painful,
and you don't want to be deluded about that either. You don't want to sort of just say, "Oh, it's all very good," because then you're not really in touch with who you are and who your feelings are. And that's I talked about before that at a growth stage, it's about what you do. But at a scaling stage, it's about who you are. Yeah. And who you are has to include an acceptance of, misery sometimes uncomfortable experiences, pain.
Change is transformation, though, isn't it?
Change, transformation, but not just saying, "Oh yeah, I can glide over this." Obviously, we need optimism, which is a growth mindset. We need to be able to know we can get through it at some level. That's the faith. But at the same time, not be in denial that things are pretty desperate sometimes or shitty. But there's stuff we can do about it. Sometimes we shouldn't be doing anything.
But sometimes there's things you can't do too, right? Like some business models are not built to scale, right? Some are not.
Right.
Like if you and I decided to sit here and say, do you know what? We should go into the business of selling fax machines, because like that sounds like a great idea and we're really passionate about it. Yeah. And we've got the sales skills and market. Yeah, but the market doesn't want fax machines.
So that's feedback.
So it's like doesn't matter whether it's like, I often have this conversation with people where I go, look, it's mindset versus model sometimes. So I can show you people who have got a mediocre mindset and a brilliant business model, and they're crushing it. Yeah. And you're sitting there going, this doesn't make any sense. And then I can show you somebody with an incredible mindset and a terrible model, and they're struggling. Yeah. And it's if you can get both right, if you've got the right mindset and the right model, you can scale and achieve incredible things.
Well, up to a point, because this is where I would say you can scale brilliantly when you've got the right mindset and strategies and the right model. But then there comes a point at which that will be your limiter, because there'll be new markets that open up. There'll be, a bigger shape of team that you need.
Yeah, true.
There'll be new technologies that come in. There'll be new systems, AI, whatever else. And suddenly there's enough of a shift that you can't simply keep following the same path. And that's where you need some sort of evolution. And that's where there's the identity shift that has to come in. Yeah. And that goes beyond mindset. You can't just learn that. You actually have to do something a bit different, which is where we'll talk about
change environment being a key part of that.
Well, environment might be part of it, but I think it's actually evolve your identity as a leader. You really have to understand the world a bit differently. It's like a paradigm shift.
Right.
So up until that point, the world was as you thought, and you could grow, you could scale using the models that you had, using the mindset that you had, using the approach that you had, using the team that you had.
Yep.
Everything.
Yep.
And scale as in just get bigger, but just to be a bigger version of what was there before. But then at some point you hit that threshold. Yeah. And that's where it's not going to be that's where you have to become a different kind of a leader, a different person. So you have to understand yourself, the world, your business in a different kind of way and operate differently. And this goes right down to identity. It's not just an overlay of mindset. This is where, say with the perfectly flawed thing, this is where you start to accommodate some of the uncomfortable truths and you allow it to steer you in a new direction.
What do you mean by accommodate?
Well, sort of learn from and grow from. So let's think of it. Can you give me an example of a business that's reached its top threshold? It's scaled very well. So what?
Yeah, I could, I can give you an example without naming who they are and whatever. But there's a business that's around, say, 19 million, which is great.
Yeah.
But it's now being constrained by the skill level of the CEO.
Right. So does that CEO just need to go and learn some skills, or does that CEO need to learn, understand a different perspective? Because the CEO probably won't steer it just by going on a course and learning a few skills.
No, absolutely right.
They'll do it they have to get a whole new way of...
Well, yeah, because if you're going to, let's go back to the ambition for a second.
Yeah.
If the ambition is to take that business to 25 and 35 million,
yeah,
it's going to require a very different team.
Yeah.
It's going to require a different senior leadership team, and they're going to require a different
structure, different systems.
Yeah, and a different leader to lead that.
Different positioning in the market, maybe.
All of that.
Yeah.
But also it's more about the person leading that team is going to need a different skill level.
Yeah, and it may not be that person can make that shift.
Or wants to. I think sometimes people, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like that's hard.
Yeah.
Like to change, to fundamentally change who you are, your identity, usually requires some kind of fairly significant intervention.
Yes.
Usually. It's usually either a level of trauma on some level.
Yes.
Or an intervention with something, in my experience.
Something makes the scales fall from your eyes.
Right. Something wakes you up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's either a shock or it's a health thing or it's something suddenly makes you go, wow, I need to change.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is, look, sometimes great coaching can do that. Sometimes, things like...
Rarely.
Yeah. Well, I think you can do it. In my experience, coaching changes it in the short term.
Yeah.
But people tend to, if they don't want to change, they'll default back to the old behavior.
I mean, peer groups can make a big difference, like yours. And I'm thinking, I started my my work in in the film industry.
Yeah, we were talking about that off camera, and I was like, I've known you quite some time. Yeah. I didn't know you were in the film industry.
Not for very long, but I was a clapper loader. But then I was a psychotherapist, and I worked with people in addiction recovery, which meant a massive identity shift. I would work with groups and help people. Some people had, been very, very successful in all walks of life. Some people hadn't been, but they were all in the same room, and they were having to take on the world in a completely different way because the way they had been working to that point no longer worked. So they had to have an identity shift. Now I work and for the last 15, 20 years, I've worked in leadership spaces. And it's the same sort of shift that I want to enable people to have.
Right.
But what happens is when you are in a level of excellence, or you're doing very well, or you're successful, it's much harder to then decide, I could get into the genius zone here. This is what Gay Hendricks, who writes about the genius zone, talks about. It's called The Big Leap.
Oh yeah, Big Leap's a brilliant book, by the way.
Yes.
Like I can visualize the cover now. It's a goldfish jumping from a small bowl into a big bowl.
That's it.
It is an absolutely brilliant book, and
it's brilliant.
Everyone should read it.
Yeah.
Everyone should read that.
So he talks about this zone of genius that we can all get into, but we upper limit ourselves because we're in this zone of excellence. It's fine if you're on the floor and your life isn't working and things are really difficult. Then you're going to there's a bit more momentum to change because you've got a very strong away from motivator.
Yes.
When you are doing very well, this is where you need to be motivated by ambition and aspiration.
It's where good is the enemy of great, right?
It is where good is the enemy of great. Yeah.
I was, from personal experience, right? When I had a business failure, that forces you to get real about what didn't work and why it didn't work and what the pain was, and that's painful. And then you pay attention to the pain, and you go, I don't want that happening again. I need to change how I run the business, or I need to change how I, lead. Yeah. For most people, it's usually some kind of business challenge, like they lose a big customer, or there's something that makes them go, wow, okay, we need to change.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is if you're successful and you're, say, give you an example of the client I was talking about, but like the significant, we're talking 18-19% growth in profits last year. Everything's, you look at all the metrics on the top line. If you're an accountant, and you go, this business is awesome, it's going in a great direction. But I'm sitting there looking and going, where we've said we want to go is going to require a very different set of disciplines.
Yes.
And skill level and empathy and that we don't have those.
And leadership.
Yeah.
Because the leadership is the thing that pulls all of that together, doesn't
And
it?
we don't have it. We don't have it in, we might have it in one person, maybe two, but we don't have a leadership team, which I think is what most entrepreneurs resist building.
Yeah.
Going, look, actually, if I'm going to lead this organization to the next level of growth, I need to lead a leadership team. Actually, that's the next investment.
Yes.
And I often say, look, you can get to sort of 10 to 15 million without 10 million without a leadership team. But if you're going to go 10 to 20 to 30 million, if that's the ambition, and if it isn't, that's fine. Yeah. But if it is, then the biggest investment is going to be in a leadership team. You're going to need to bring really good talent on at that point. Yeah. That's been up that mountain before you, and knows what it looks like. So
what we're talking about is not growing, but evolution. Of business, of the leadership team, of the whole of the leader. But it's very interesting you talk about leadership team, because I was just thinking about back to my film days. I worked on a film with Francis Ford Coppola's niece, and this is her first film. She had no experience. She was directing. But she had the clout, so she could get in an amazing leadership team. So she had a fantastic director of photography, the cinematographer. Right. She had a fantastic head of the art department, fantastic script, so everything, great cast. So she basically had a leadership team, awesome leadership team. And she was wise enough, and she had been briefed perhaps by her uncle enough to know they have absolute incredible expertise in all of their areas. Trust them. And she was the glue that pulled them all together, and she did an awesome job, and it was a great film. And that was her first film. And now she's doing really well over the last 20 plus years, she's made a number of films and done very well. But I remember at the time thinking, she's got no experience, but it doesn't actually matter, because she has incredible people and she's not standing in their way. Yep. And maybe there's a lesson there for people building their leadership team.
100%. But I think that's an interesting identity piece in itself, because I think what stops that happening is suddenly people get scared that they're bringing people in who are better than them, at certain disciplines. Finance, marketing, whatever.
Which is what you want.
Which is what you need. And if you want to go where you want to go, that's what you need. But then there's that ego part, right? There's the ego that suddenly goes, but I don't want to sit in a room and look like I'm not the smartest person in the room. And I'm like, Richard Branson talks about it, hire great people, put them around you, let them go on with it. Yeah. But I think there's a programming bit here that tends to catch people out, because it's certainly caught me out over the years, is that when you're in the sort of sub $1 million space, you do it all. Nice. You're turning it, you're spinning all the plates, right? Or putting out, everyone talks about that analogy. Yeah. And therefore you get quite good at it, but you're not great at it, but you're good at it. And that is the Achilles heel, I think, because you sit there and you go, I'm quite good at this. Yeah. And I kind of like it. It kind of gives me a dopamine hit. I kind of like it. And then you hire somebody who's great at it. You now lose a sense of significance. And then you also lose the dopamine, because now you're not getting the hits of dopamine. Yeah. And I think one of the things I've come to realize about leadership in the last year, big time for me, is actually you've got to wean yourself off the dopamine addiction. Wow. Because when you're in hustle phase, which is like up to $1 million, maybe up to 2, up to 3, you get regular doses of dopamine, because you're probably still doing sales. Once you start to go above 5 and you're going to 5 to 10, you might be working on an acquisition deal that takes 2 years. You might be working on a joint venture partnership with global distribution, right? But that takes 18 months to pull off. So if you've been used to working in short sales cycles where you get hit every month, and the stuff you now work on that's more strategic, which only really you can do as CEO, is sometimes a 2-year payoff. Yes. And actually that's really hard. And what I've seen is people who jump back in to tactical stuff, not because they don't trust the people, it's because they miss the dopamine. They miss the I get to feel like a hero today thing. And it's actually, I actually think it's a big thing now about, if you want to go up the scale up mountain and you want to really play that game, you have to be okay with letting go of that addiction, which goes back to your point about addiction, right? Yeah. And I think the addiction to the dopamine and the winning it actually keeps you small. Yes. Yeah. Well, we'll and it's back to expectation as well, this expectation idea, because when we wake up in the morning on a fresh day, we have an opportunity to do things in a new and a fresh way. But we tend to follow the old neural pathways that we've had
before, we tend to follow patterns, we tend to follow habits.
Yeah.
What we have to do is sort of constantly remind ourselves that our past doesn't have to dictate our future.
Yep.
And if we want to not just scale, but scale and evolve into crossing thresholds in our business, then we have to have fresh thinking and fresh pathways and come at it not through those habits. So we've got to be really conscious and aware of what those things are. I love what you're saying about the dopamine hit, because we know how to get the dopamine the old way. We don't know how to get it the new way.
No.
So we have to link some sort of dopamine or excitement or engagement with that risk-taking of it being a new and a fresh approach. But one of the thoughts that came to me was that, like, somebody like Branson, I know somebody who worked with him very early on when it was Virgin Records. She's really efficient. She was COO to him. And I wonder whether Branson's been able to run massive businesses because he already understands that he can't do it all. He already understood he couldn't do it, perhaps through his dyslexia or whatever else.
Yeah.
But he got people in at a really early stage to manage the business. So he was already able to let go. And he's always been, and I know other people who have worked, you know, at very senior level with him, and he's given them huge remits.
But I think he also knows his zone of genius. I think he knows what he's brilliant at.
Yeah.
And then doesn't try and be an all-rounder. I think that's the danger of when you start a business and you're underfunded, you do it all because you have to. And what I think that does is it conditions you to go, look, I can be an all-rounder, I can do all of it. Whereas excellence is about picking the thing you want to be brilliant at and becoming the best that you can possibly be on that.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want to be a great speaker, you know, if you want to be a great speaker, okay, great, you've got to learn that. But then you're probably going to need to learn marketing too.
Yes.
And you're going to need to probably learn to write a book. And you go, actually, just to become a great speaker, there's about 7 other things you've got to learn to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you go, well, then that's what makes it hard. And you can be a great speaker, but if you don't know how to market, if you don't know how to create content, if you don't know how to write a book, you're not going to get booked as a speaker, or it's going to be a lot harder to do. So, you know, I think quite often we get into any industry, any business, because we like the thing that we want to do. Then we end up having to do all this other stuff. And I think I've done it both ways. I've started businesses on a credit card, and I've started businesses by raising millions of pounds of funding.
Yeah.
And the difference is honestly the speed you move and the fact that you don't put yourself in boxes if you've got the funding, because you immediately just go, let's just hire someone to do that because we've got the money.
Okay.
Whereas when you don't, you go, well, I've got time in abundance, so let's use my time. And that then conditions you to get stuck in that, I can do it, I can do it. And then letting go of it becomes the hardest part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that tends to, you know, stop people who are good becoming great.
Yes. And there's a lot of tension. Well, you talk about hustle culture earlier on, and there's a lot of tension that is around, say, AI and technologies and efficiencies and intelligence, that because people kind of go, how do I stay ahead? How do I learn the next thing? You know, and maybe that's why so many of your conversations have been around AI, because everybody wants to know, and there's no doubt about it. They can make huge differences to our business. But as the human beings dealing with all of this, it is not going to serve ourselves, our business, or anyone if we are getting into a total spin, you know, hustling and seeing there's more opportunity, there's more ways, what else can I implement? There comes a point at which we need to just sort of stop and drop into ourselves. And this is where the businesses that really will thrive will be set apart from the others, because this will be led by the human beings who can drop in and just just take a breath. We can't think well when we're spinning. You know, we're not creative. We don't have new ideas. We don't connect well with customers, with audience, whoever else, when our brain is running at 1,000 miles an hour. And while we get the dopamine, it's exciting and fun, and we can maybe get a lot done. Is it useful stuff? Sometimes this is where we just need to just take a breath. And this is what I see for the future with AI. How do we as human beings deal with the kind of breakneck speed of it all?
I think it's a really good question, but I also think you've got two different things. I think there's how do you lead, well, 3 actually. How do you lead yourself during a period of massive change?
Yeah.
it would be no difference if you and I were sat here having this conversation and we were going back to when electricity was invented. Same thing.
Yeah.
That was going to change the world, but everyone didn't know how. Or when, railroads were, all of that, the massive changes in the way that the human beings have existed.
Yeah. So how do we lead ourselves?
So how do we lead ourselves? I think is a really interesting question. Like, how do you lead yourself? Because if you can't lead yourself and keep yourself focused, calm, in control, if you constantly getting hijacked by everyone else's agendas, then you're
dopamine hijacking.
but you're also not going to be able to lead anybody else, right?
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, then there's how do I lead my family?
Yes.
Because you could have a big family, you could be you may not have a family, but you got an upline family rather than downstream family. We've all got some kind of family that we're a part of. It's like, well, who's leading that? Because got a 20-year-old son. It's like, okay, he needs some leadership about how his world's going to be very different in the next 5 years, and how is he going to get ready for that? And if I'm sitting there spinning out of control about it, I can't lead him. Or, how does AI help us as a family? And you suddenly go, well, actually, my wife with a brain injury, it is life-changing for her. And I think when anyone says to me, oh, it's terrible, it's like, you have no idea what that's done for her, because she can just talk to it and say, oh, I'm struggling to remember what this thing that's like the green thing on the wall with, and it will come back to her and go, oh, you mean this? And she's like, exactly, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are ways it will change people's lives that we don't understand yet. In the same way that when electricity came out, we didn't understand how it was going to be used, whether it was lights or, televisions or, signage or whatever. Those were just the ways it was applied. And I think then you got to go into work and say, well, okay, so you're a leader at work too.
Yeah.
So there's three kind of spheres of leadership.
Yes.
And if you're not leading yourself, then you're not going to be very good when you turn up at work either. Yeah. Whether you're running the business or working in it, you're still not going to be able to lead your customers or your team, because they're all dealing with the uncertainty too, right?
Well, I wouldn't see those as three overlapping circles. I see them as concentric. So you start with self-leadership in the middle.
Right.
And then you have your family, your community, your loved ones, whatever that looks like, kind of around you, because that tells you, that's so much of your identity. We talked about being the same on stage and off, being the same as you appear. That's because you're in that milieu. Who are you when you're not at work? And then you have your business, which is an expression of you. It expands out of you.
Yes.
And it reflects your sort of ambition, your ideas, and what you're putting out into the world, the value that you're able to give. So yes, it starts with that self-leadership, and it starts with making sure that person at the centre of it all, in each case ourselves, that person is, we're aware of what's going on, we're able to be calm and relaxed, we're able to take a breather and think. Not a lot of thinking goes on. I mean, we're so busy, and I'm as bad as anyone, so, tempted to scroll through lots of ideas, absorb. I mean, I love growing and learning, so I'm constantly learning ideas, but sometimes it's just stopping and reflecting and going, well, what do I think about this? What's my voice here? And it's when I create that, or when I put my own voice out there, I can say something unique and different. And that comes, that then goes into family, as you say, or loved ones, home, whoever shapes your identity. Yeah.
But all three can be disrupted. Just listening to you, I'm going,
right.
So I think we talk a lot about the business disruption because of AI, right?
Yeah.
My personal, if you like, identity was massively disrupted when I had my heart attack, and I've talked about it on your podcast and how that fundamentally changed my identity, right? Completely changed my identity. Yeah. Then you go, okay, well, within your family, if somebody gets sick or they have cancer or they, my wife got the brain injury, that disrupted that circle.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, then there's a bit, so like each one of those leadership circles, if we call it that, can be disrupted by either things that you do to yourself or things that are out of your control.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the journey is how quickly can you recover and rebuild that circle.
Yeah. We don't want to it's such an interesting word, recover, because we don't always want to recover.
True.
I think sometimes we want to be a phoenix from the ashes, or like
embrace
out of it, be something different because of it, and ideally
I think you used the word evolve, didn't you, earlier?
Evolve. And I think it's really important that these things that happen in our personal histories don't become that they become more, make us more, rather than I'd be okay if that thing hadn't happened.
But you had that in your own life, right? Wasn't it about the age of 11? You were living in Hong Kong.
Yes, yeah.
And then like you had your personal circle for the family side of it got massively fractured, really?
That's right. Yeah, when I was 11, I had an idyllic childhood in Hong Kong, doing lots of swimming and jumping off boats, and it was a great life. Yeah. I mean, I always think Hong Kong's a really interesting place as well from a entrepreneurial perspective, because I call it the Hong Kong mentality. They'll put buildings up, they'll pull down another building 2 or 3 years later, and they'll put another building up. Like there's this sense you can do anything. You can just kind of like out with the old, in with the new all the time. Sometimes it's out with some really nice old things, but I love that mentality. But anyway, I'm digressing. So yeah, at 11,
that's why it's good to travel, actually, to go to other energies. Actually,
yeah,
I get recharged if I go to a place like that. I come back very kind of like inspired, energized. Because I think
Dubai is like that too.
Yeah. Although not quite so much at the minute, but it is. No, Dubai is absolutely like that, because it's just you walk around and go, nothing is impossible here.
Yeah,
it's just a question of how you're going to do it and how much money is it going to take. And I think Hong Kong was the first version of that in a big way, I think.
Yes, it definitely had that energy about it. And then when I was 11, my parents' marriage broke up. My mother moved to England. My father was in Hong Kong. I stayed for the end of school there. And then I went to a series of boarding schools in England, like a whole different... I mean, I was English, and I went to an English primary school in Hong Kong. But it was a different culture, and each of those schools was a different culture.
Right.
Which made me really adaptable, and that stood me in great stead. By the time I was 18, I'd been to, I think, 8 different schools, lived in 12 different homes, and 3 different boarding schools where you're sleeping in different dormitories and things kind of every term. So I got to just sort of say, well, it's not about where I am. It's not my environment that makes me me. It's just me, just turn up. And I adapt, and I was lucky that I got on very well with people. I always made friends easily, and that stood me in great stead throughout my career. I've been, because I often go into new rooms and have to, of all different types of businesses and organisations, and have to find some value to offer in that room to the people in there. But at what point does adapting become self-erasure or self-abandonment? And I think there were points at which I adapted so much, I lost track of who was me. I could be this great chameleon, Was
that hard? Because, 11, 12, 13, they're kind of pivotal ages in identity, aren't they, really? Kind of like that sort of up to 16 that's when you really kind of figure out who you are.
Yeah, I suppose so. My family, I still kind of link back to my family, even though they were spread apart. It was great to have, my brother was only 18 months younger, so he was at different schools and things, and we weren't necessarily together then. I had a much younger sister. We weren't together as the 5 of us again, and we weren't ever really in the same country again. My brother's not lived in England since he finished uni, so he's been in Hong Kong and South Africa. He lives in South Africa. But I realised that my family wasn't about location, and where I was. But I think this being adaptable, or being fitting in and making things work in whatever environment, got to this, I talked about the self-abandonment thing. It got to this point where I was really saying, well, who am I and what am I about? And I think you're right, those teenage years, early teens years probably do shape you quite a lot. And I was just someone who always had a smile. I was naturally, I am naturally optimistic, and that's seen me through a lot. But I think it was hiding a lot as well. I think I'd put on a big, put on a smile. I'd always say, be very bright and cheerful, but probably there was a lot of unprocessed confusion, and probably no mistake I became a psychotherapist. And,
Do you think that was part of it? Do you think that sort of, there's that whole thing that sometimes, especially if you're in the sort of the education space or around that, you tend to kind of get drawn to teaching things you want to learn more about yourself or master in yourself.
Oh, yes. I'm a big advocate of you teach what you most need to learn. Absolutely. And, then working in...
But how do you get into that? Like, Like, I mean, sorry, excuse my ignorance, right? It's like, do you have to go to uni, study that? Do you apply? Like, how did you get into it?
Oh, I did lots of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You do psychotherapy training, sort of post-grad training, and like you can do counselling training, psychotherapy.
Did you specialise in addiction?
I did. I didn't do a special training necessarily. I did a bit of training in it, but I also did hypnotherapy. NLP. I did an NLP psychotherapy training as well. But I really got into it through hypnotherapy because I was drawn into the idea that I've always been very fascinated with consciousness.
Right.
And even from a young age, 14, 15, I'd read about near-death experiences, which you've shared.
Yeah.
You're one with me. I've always been interested in, who we can be beyond the limitations of our body. And on a more sort of day-to-day level, you'd hear these stories of, say, a mother would be able to lift a car off her child. You sort of think, wow, we've all got this capacity, not just physically, but we've got a psychological capacity. We've got an emotional capacity that's so much more than most of us are living in. Most of us are living in a very small.
Why do you think that is? Is it fear that keeps people playing small?
It's almost like we have, back to a lot of those habits as well. We know what works. So yes, maybe it is fear. We've learned, we kind of come into this the limitations of our body and the limitations of our kind of ego or our personality.
Yeah.
And our family and our culture, and we're told this is how you survive in this environment.
Yeah,
this is who you have to be in this environment to get by.
Survive.
Otherwise, it's painful.
Yeah,
if you step out of turn, if you don't fit in, there are consequences. So we all learn to fit in. We all learn who we are by that environment that we've grown up in. Those are our early family narratives and our early educational narratives and our cultural narratives. And I think what happened to me is at 11, suddenly that old narrative kind of bust apart.
Yeah.
And then I was at these different schools, and each school had a different culture, and I could be a different person. And
that's almost like you got to try on different versions of yourself. It's like,
yeah, but then who was I amongst all of that?
Yeah.
And I believe that underneath it, there is this, that there is something that is much greater, the genius, or as I call it, but the truest version of us is so much greater. We all have so much enormous potential, and we're just limited by all these stories. That's what I talk about in my book, Your Leadership Story.
Yeah, I was going to talk about stories because I think the interesting thing about the book title is Your Leadership Story is like, what is the story that you're telling yourself?
Yeah.
And I think that stops people taking risk.
Yeah.
I think it stops. First of all, you have to identify you're telling yourself a story, right?
It's very difficult because we can't see our stories because they look true to us.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like our truth, but all that's happened is we've had events in our life, which are objective events,
right?
And then we have selected some and made meaning out of them, and and said that's who we are. And so I agree with you. This is why it's so important to go to be in different environments, travel. Talk to different people with completely different perspectives, because each one of those kind of opens up our mind.
Yeah, I also think that's why, like whether it's coming to things like the events we run, the Grown Up Business Retreat, I think when you sit, in a pool with talking to somebody else and you realise they're just like you, they've got the same issues, the same stuff that they're dealing with, and they've gone on and built something massively successful, you sit there and you go, oh, hang on a second, I'm the one that's talking myself out of this, actually, because they're dealing with the same stuff I am, or they've dealt with it, or actually they're dealing with worse stuff than I'm dealing with, and the story I'm telling myself about why I can't get to my goal is just a story, and actually I don't even remember when I bought it. Now, look, a lot of it is definitely conditioning, media conditioning and things like that tell you that, oh, you're at this age, you're only supposed to be able to do this at this age, and it's like... Yeah. I think unless you get around people who are busting those myths wide open and going, yeah I know that it's like that society might tell you that, but I choose to ignore that. I'm going to do this. And then when you get around people like that and you see it, you're like, oh yeah, hang on a second, I don't have to play that game. It's like, there's a great quote by Steve Jobs, isn't there? It's like, when you realise that the world is made, basically the rules in the world are just made up by people who are no different to you. You'll suddenly start to challenge them and go, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I create a business?
If that person can do it, why can't I? And especially when you're near people, when I started rowing, I immediately was lucky enough to be with people who were going to the Olympics. So suddenly I was around, quite early on in my rowing career, I was amongst people that were going to the Olympics. So I kind of went, oh, well, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do that.
So it normalises it, right?
Normal, yeah. Why shouldn't I be able to? It's normal. But if you don't ever meet someone like that, you just work at a different level. And that's why things like your groups and your...
that's why I'm a fan of community. It's like you have to get around people who are on the same journey as you. Otherwise, if you're the odd one in the room, it's very hard for you to level up your thinking if you're the only business owner in a room. It's like if you go to dinner parties or something like and everyone else is employed and you're the one that owns a business. It is a very challenging night out because it's like don't really know how to talk with everyone because it's like we have a totally different map of the world. And it wouldn't matter what I said, you're not going to relate to it, and I don't really relate to you, and therefore it becomes quite those conversations become hard. And I think my wife says it brilliantly, and sometimes the brain injury has her say things that, and I just go, actually, that's brilliant. And she goes, you lot are just a different tribe.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Actually, we are. Like people who decide to go and start businesses or run businesses or scale businesses or, it's a different mindset. There's I think, you talk about like your first-hand experience of ADHD. I think there is something fundamentally different about it. We were watching the Gordon Ramsay documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it, about being Gordon Ramsay, about him building his latest £20 million restaurant and 22 Bishopsgate, which is insane. And there was a bit in one of the episodes we were watching at dinner a couple of nights ago, and something happened to the furniture, and he stood up and it had broken, and he just stood up and looked at it and went, "Is that normal?" And she goes, "You do that all the time." And I was like, "Do I?" She goes, "Yeah, you do that." She goes, "When something goes wrong at an event or whatever, you won't say that's wrong. You look at the person that's on your team and you go, is that normal?" And she said, "I thought that was just you criticizing me." And she goes, "Clearly looking at you," and it's like,
So what's going on when you?
Well, I think it's. We tried to unpack that because I was like, I think it's a way of it's a reaction of that isn't normal. Right. So in my head, what's just happened isn't normal. That shouldn't be that way.
Right.
So I'm asking you if you think that's normal, because if you do, then we've got an issue. Like if you go, "No, that's not normal," I'm like, "Oh, okay, great. You get that that's important." Yeah. If you turn around and go, "Yeah, that's completely normal that we don't follow up with people for 3 weeks." Yeah. It's like, right. No, it's really not. Yeah. That's not normal. And I think it's almost like a calibrating question.
Yes.
Of like, I'm trying to calibrate whether you see what I see.
Yeah.
But she says, the way you say it makes me sound like I'm the problem. And I said, I promise you that's not how I mean it.
Yeah.
But I hadn't even realized that. And she just goes, "Oh, it's not you. I've learned watching this. It's like, there's a trait with entrepreneurs. They have certain phrases and things that they tend to use that other people sometimes don't understand because it is a different language."
That's really interesting. I mean, it seems to be maybe something about standards, or maybe because you're more likely to occupy a world of what could be possible, what you'd like to have happen.
Potentially.
And so anything that's kind of in the circle of what is generally happening, you want to check in. Oh, is that okay? Is that normal? Is that day-to-day reality? Is
that normal that bitch is there? Either that piece of machinery is there as it should be over there? Is that normal?
Is that
our place?
Reality now? Because you're looking at the world as it could be.
Yeah.
Not at the world as it is right now. So you're sometimes checking with people that can see the world as it is now.
Totally, exactly that. But they don't hear it that way. They hear it like I'm criticizing them. Like, of course it's not normal. You don't think I know? It's like, no. I think it is that. I think it's that we're living in the future of where we're going next. And then when something like that happens, it's very like jolting.
Yes.
And then we're like, wait a second, is that normal? Have I missed? Like, did I miss that? Which I think is really fascinating.
I think this time thing is really interesting because I do think some people live, some people, and it tends to be people who are entrepreneurial, live in that future space, and other people live in more evidence-based. My husband is he's done very well in the corporate world.
Yeah.
He likes evidence that he can see. So when I say, "I'm really excited about this possibility," or "this exciting thing's happening," he'll kind of like, kind of, oh yeah, I'll believe it when it happens.
I see it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
And it really deflates me. So now I don't share that excitement up front because I know he can't see it till I've done it. And when I wrote my book, he said to me, "Oh, when did you write that?" And I said, "I told you when." Like every time I said to you I was writing, he goes, "I thought you were just in a cafe having coffees." I was like,
no, I was actually writing a book.
Yeah, when I said I was writing a book, that was what I was doing. And you know, but it's a challenge to have faith in a future that hasn't yet come. But this is
the only way you manifest it, though.
It's the only way.
It's the only way you manifest it is if you believe enough that it will come to pass. This too shall pass. All that.
Yeah.
You know, you have to. If you don't hold the faith and believe it, there isn't any energy towards it.
You have to have the vision, and then you just go towards it full throttle, even if it might not happen. And I think that was why when I had my trauma response, it from losing that baby, and I'd lost expectation, which I talked about before. You know, having both intention and expectation is really important because you can't lie about expectation. No. It's what's really true for you. I expect this thing to happen. You know, and when I lost that, it was like everything, the tunnel was black, rather than having a light. I just
you can't go towards it then. If
there's nothing to go towards.
Why move?
I got stuck in the present, and I had a mantra which helped me, presence in the present. And I still use that mantra because I think sometimes when things are difficult, presence in the present is powerful. And I do believe there are times where we need to check in and be fully present.
100%.
And that's in short supply as well.
Yeah.
in today's world, we so many of us are sort of living in the past, or kind of go, it would be nice if that thing happened in the future. But having real presence, embodied presence, physically here, breathing, being in the now is massively important for manifesting and creating what we want in the future. Because the future is an idea which we're moving into.
Yeah. Co-create. I think you're co-creating it.
Yeah.
At any given time, you're co-creating the future.
But with our presence now, we can't. If we're absent from that sense
of to be here.
Yeah.
Now it's hard, right? Because we're conditioned to be, and devices are trying to drag us everywhere else.
Yeah.
To just be in the moment is actually becoming a skill set as a leader.
Yeah.
To be able to be sat in a room and be with somebody and not be worried about where you're going next, what you're doing next, just to be, that the whole the be do have is like, but sometimes being is just to be.
This is the opposite to addiction.
Yeah.
And this is the opposite to hustle. And this is exactly what we're saying, with the onslaught of AI and the need to run faster and faster and faster and faster, or this perceived need. We don't need to run faster. What we need to do is be. As you were just saying.
I think the running faster and faster creates, for me, that was certainly one of the contributing factors to me getting sick, was that I was just trying to run faster and faster and faster.
Yeah. And
trying to outrun trauma that I hadn't dealt with or things like that. And I think that's why most people, in my experience, a lot of the people I've coached over the years, they don't want to slow down, because if they slow down, they're going to have to deal with the trauma they've been out running for 10 years and they don't want to actually do the work.
Yeah.
So just keep running.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but at some point it catches you.
It does.
And I think, and then you have to deal with it, and it's normally not on your terms, right?
Exactly. This is why if we can make that evolution not because of some traumatic incident, if we can jump into the genius zone and without something forcing us, then it's much less painful. But how we do it is, okay, we've got lots of pain perhaps we don't need to look at, but I think the key is just recognizing our emotions won't kill us, what we feel won't kill us. Being here now, it won't kill us to feel.
No.
And that
it might feel uncomfortable, it might feel painful, but then
you release it.
But isn't that there was a video I watched where they talked about the brain only holds that for 90 seconds. Everything after that is just you repeating it and rerunning the program.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's interesting, because like, what am I holding on to? It happened actually last night. Your phone sort of pings up like things from the last, I think it was a picture of us that came out today that I sent you. I was like, wow, this is really that came up on my phone last night or this morning or whatever, last night. And And there's one that came up from something that was at the time quite traumatic, but it was 2014. And I looked at the picture and I thought, wow, I held on to that moment and that story and the meaning I gave it for 5, 6 years. And I looked at the picture and the picture now had no emotion for me. It was just a picture.
Wow. And
I was like, yeah, but like, what made me buy that story of being a victim to that event? Because every time I told it to somebody, I could tell it better, the story, and then it had more emotion, and you'd get more sympathy or whatever the emotion. And
so you entrench that story back to the neural pathways. It became a truth or a reality to you. I was the victim in that situation.
And now I looked at the photo and I went, it was just an event. It happened, and like, it doesn't define you. It didn't. And it was just interesting that I just sort of gone, yeah, that was an event, okay. And I'd obviously moved let that go some years ago. But it was just interesting to see that picture because it just made me go, okay, I have grown since that event.
Yeah.
I have been better at letting go of stuff and not letting it drag on. So like, one of the big things is, for me as a leader, is I think if you're going to have an uncomfortable conversation, have it as soon as you can.
Right.
So for me, it's like, I always say that, like, say to clients, is like, you are probably 3 or 4 squeaky hand moment conversations away from cleaning up all the stuff that's bothering you at the moment.
Yeah.
It's just you're not having those moments because you go, oh, I don't want to have this conversation. It's like, but every one you have, the more you have them, the more skilled you get. But you also realize they're never, ever as bad as, like, I remember a client of mine recently going, oh, I don't want to tell this person they're not cut out for this job. And I said, look, they might be begging you to tell them because they're really unhappy at the moment, but they just don't want to let you down. You ever thought of that? And he was like, I didn't think that was a possibility. I said, well, knowing their profile and knowing them, if they're really struggling, they're not going to tell you. So they actually need you as a leader to tell them that this isn't for them. You can see it on them. And he was like, you think? I was like, look, what's the worst that's happen is they turn around and go, no, it's definitely for me. And you can go, well, in which case, then we need to give you some training or something.
Yeah.
And he had that conversation, and this person like literally gave him the biggest hug ever and went, thank you so much. I am struggling like crazy. I don't want to do this anymore. Please, can I go and do something else in the company? I don't want to leave. Is there another role I can do? And you go, how long was that conversation put off? Weeks. Weeks and weeks and weeks. And actually, it's just having that courage to be real, right? Which is what your whole model is about, is like having the courage to be real, whether that's in your business or your personal life. It's like the more real conversations you have, the better it gets. So talk to us about the real model and like where it came from.
Well, I think part of just on that is it's so important to just name the elephant in the room, because everybody knows. We talk about getting real. Everybody knows that there's some sort of elephant in the room. Both parties are probably skirting around the conversation.
True.
So it might be, like for all of us, we can sit here and go, okay, what are the conversations that I probably need to have that I haven't had? We could all set ourselves. We can probably all think of 1 or 2 right now. And what we got to do is name the elephant in the room, walk towards those conversations, not away from them. As a way of being in the world. Yeah. I'm the sort of person who walks towards, like, tell yourself, I'm the sort of person who walks towards these difficult conversations. And that's the perfectly flawed idea, because it's about embracing, not turning away from what's uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's getting real. That's getting real. It's knowing that, we can distort the world and make it and kind of go, that shouldn't be there. That shouldn't happen. But it is.
Yeah.
It is. So, like, that's a reality check. If something is not as it should be, well, whose rule book is that? That's just some idea that we've dreamt up in our head.
Yeah.
Things are as they are, and then we move towards where we want them to be. So this is holding both the chair that's fallen over in the Ramsey thing. Okay, that's what's happened.
Yep.
And then, but this is how we want it to be. So we're moving things. So the real model is about, I started off by thinking of it as getting real in an unreal world.
There we go. So if you're on YouTube, congratulations. If you're listening, there is a graphic on the screen that we will talk about. But if you're on YouTube, you can see it on the screen.
You can probably see it on Spotify as well.
Probably, on Spotify. It'll be there. Yeah.
So getting real in an unreal world. The world's becoming increasingly unreal.
So true.
In every way. We live half our lives virtually. We're hardly embodied. I mean, even my thesis, when I graduated from my degree, when we hardly had emails at the time, but it was about what's going to happen in this increasingly virtual world.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because I've always been fascinated by where do we fit as biological organisms against this increasingly virtual world. And at the time, this is like 94, the Lawnmower Man, I don't really know that film.
Yeah, I know them. I haven't watched it, but I know it.
Yeah, and so basically he had a sort of virtual reality bodysuit, and he was even having sex with somebody in this virtual reality bodysuit. And I was going, oh my God, so we can have test tube babies, maybe we don't need a womb, maybe we can procreate, maybe we're not even going to need any physical, we don't even need a body soon, It's not going to be...
Well, what's human evolution, isn't it? I mean, there's a whole other different question, isn't it? But it's like where and I always think movies are brilliant at showing you what the future could be. So like one of my favorite movies, and it's about 15 years old, was Will Smith in iRobot.
Oh yeah.
And if you watch that now, electric cars, pretty normal. Self-driving cars, pretty normal.
Yeah.
And you look at that and you're going, oh, hello, this is interesting. It's like like home robots, possibly 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, because they're 20 grand you can have one at home.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like robots that mow the lawn, hoover the house, it's just
absolutely. Yeah.
That's all happening, right?
Yeah.
We're living in the middle of it.
And we've got all these prosthetics which are incredibly amazing, like hands which can... I remember this artist called Stellark, and he would put on a limb and he could make the limb move through electric pulses, which I think is now probably what prosthetic limbs can do often now, where they can pick things up with their hands just by pulsing things, Well,
last year at Scale Up Summit, we had Aidan Meller, who's a client of mine, an F12 member for many years, who, with investment and investors has created a robot called Ada, right? And Ada is the world's first AI artist. So Ada constantly assesses and sees things and then draws art based on what she's observing in humanity.
Yeah.
And he talked about, how that idea came about from being on a retreat and having time to think. Exactly that point of being away from the day to day and having the time to think and reflect and going, okay, AI is coming without question.
Yeah.
Because I was talking about that on retreat 5 years ago, and then saying, you got to ask yourself the question, what's this going to do to the industry you're in? And he was like AI artist is good. The first person who cracks that is, and he didn't know how to do it, had no clue, he doesn't know anything about robotics, doesn't know anything about AI. So you spend the next 2 years literally building his team, his leadership team and everything, getting investors, doing stuff with Oxford University, to the point at which, this incredible robot that is an artist and has had an exhibition at the Tate Gallery and all this kind of stuff. And you go, that's blurring the line now between what's real and what's not. It's like genuinely fascinating.
Yes.
And you go, wow, unless you were outside your day-to-day operational, you would never have seen that.
Yeah.
You would never have even seen that as a possibility to, that possibility thinking.
So what this is about is, so
leaders need to be real, basically.
We need to be real. But it will also, not just we need to be, if we want to get an edge over everybody else who has access to AI and all the other systems, yes, we need to work with it.
Right.
But we need to get what I call the human edge.
Okay.
Which is, really building into our humanity and understanding how to operate as the human beings we are in our most optimal way.
Yep.
And we have so much more potential, as we alluded to before, than we are usually tapping into. We're using very small limiting idea, limited by our stories.
Right.
So what this is the Real Leadership Program helps leaders get the human edge, stay clear, stay human and effective under pressure. So this compass is a way of reorienting when we're kind of going like, I need a reality check. How do I get real here? How do I lead? This could be used in decision making.
Okay.
Or it could be when there's just something very challenging. At any point, you can kind of get out your real compass and ask yourself these four, orientate yourself amongst these four navigational points. So the first one is real. what are the results that I both intend and expect?
Yes, I like that sort of contrast between those two. Actually, really, really good.
Yeah. So what are the results that I want to get here? And so you really set those results, and you have to orientate yourself from that future place where you're in the desired end result.
Right.
Because the current you doesn't know the solution, but the future you, who has got that, who's in that end place, does know more.
Right.
They understand more because it's a different human being. And you don't get there adjacently. You don't get there by saying, how do I get there? You get there by leaping, doing a kind of quantum leap into that person. Do you remember that quantum leap program?
I used to love that TV show.
I loved it.
Dates us both, but it was still brilliant. And it's out, I think it's replaying on, I think it's Amazon Prime or something. It's just brilliant. It was just a great premise. I loved the premise of it, you know.
Oh, I did as well, yeah.
So clever.
You're limited by, for those that don't know, the character jumps into, he finds himself in a new body.
Somebody else's life, right?
Somebody else's life. And he only knows he only has their voice and
their body and...
Yeah, their capabilities. But and sometimes he might become an opera singer or something. So he's got things that he might not be able to do as well. But he has the ability to say, well, what's the best way to resolve this or deal with this differently?
Puzzle he's got to solve, right?
Yeah, because he's not limited by that person's story.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, okay.
So he's out of that. He's made a quantum leap out of that person's story.
Which is sometimes a great question to ask yourself. Is like, I've often done this to clients of mine who are struggling and say, oh, I can't because, which is usually a great story hook, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so if Richard Branson owned your business, what would he do right now? Or if Elon Musk owned it? Yeah. And people go, oh, well, he'd do this. Yeah. And I was like, well, then why can't you?
Yes.
And it's like, oh, that's quite a confronting kind of realization. Yeah. Well,
sometimes people go, well, he's got the resources or whatever else. But you go, no, but if he leapt into your body, did a quantum leap into your situation.
Or it happens on retreat all the time. You'll be sat in a breakout group on retreat, by the pool with 2 or 3 other people who don't know anything about your business, for example, like they're not in it day to day, and you'll be giving them a story about why you can't achieve this level of growth or raise this money and whatever.
Yeah.
And somebody will just burst that bubble in like seconds because they'll just look at you and go, oh, well, why don't you just do this, this and this?
Yeah.
And you'll just sit there and go, I couldn't, how did I not see that?
Yeah.
But you can't because you are trapped by the stories that have built the business to the point it's at.
That's it.
Someone else comes on and goes, oh, that's easy. You just do this, this and this. And then you literally walk back and you just go, okay, somebody just like burst that story and now I can see the world completely differently.
Yes.
But it often takes somebody else to do that. You can't do it. You can't burst the bubble from within it, I think.
No, it's very difficult. And the other thing I think that's really important, you just reminded me of what you were saying there about results, is don't make the desired result come from a kind of egoic place of this will reinforce my status, this will make me look good. Yeah. Those generally don't work out well for you. No. So it's got to be a real sort of heartfelt desire that this is something which would really excite me and energize me, this result. And I'm sure, I'm
gives you more energy than, if it gives you more energy to achieve it, if you feel you'll get more energized by achieving it, then you will be able to keep going for longer too.
Yeah. Whereas if you're doing it because, people will love me more.
Done that.
Oh, yeah. We've all done it. You know, we've all
bought
done
stuff because I thought if I bought stuff, people would think certain things, all of that. Right?
Exactly. You know, I'll get loved, I'll get approval, I'll get appreciation, but all of that. And we're all driven by that. It's always the tension, the intention between the kind of egoic drivers and which are kind of short-term solving some problems that just to make us feel better, sticking plasters, or this real energizing desire, which is where our massive full potential comes in, where we can really find that. So that's results. And then, so the next one is emotional intelligence.
Right.
The emotional intelligence, to engage, to energize and empower. So emotional intelligence is 4 things: understanding our own emotions.
Okay.
And knowing how to manage. Number 2 is knowing how to manage those emotions appropriately. So, obviously it's not, if you're feeling angry, it's not ideal just to throw a chair around.
Generally not. HR gets involved.
Exactly. So, and then so to manage our emotions, and that takes that kind of extra level of sophistication.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is to tune into other people's emotions. So just get a sense of what's going on. And that can just be one other person, but it can also be, the culture of your organization or your business. What's going on around the place? What's the kind of can you take a litmus test and see, is there interest? Is there excitement? Are people up for this or are they not? Are people disappointed? Are they cynical? What's going on? Can you feel, can you sense that?
Yes.
When you've got that emotional intelligence to tune into others, the next one is being able to influence or inspire or manage or communicate to others in such a way that, it's the same as managing your own emotions. You do what's most effective and powerful with that emotion, but you know what it is. You're not in denial about it.
Yes.
So emotional intelligence is not being really detached and brittle and then not feeling anything. It is, you can be really passionate and really excited. You know what you're passionate about. You can be sad, you can be upset, you can be angry, you can be all of those things.
Yeah.
And you behave appropriately. And the same with other people. You allow everybody else to be as they are. Yeah. And you communicate that. So that's emotional intelligence. Authenticity. Well, authenticity is kind of speaks for itself. It's...
I don't know.
Or does it?
Look, I'm going to challenge that for a second. Because I think you can only be authentic if you know who you are and are comfortable with your flaws and your, whether the flaws that you've had, the things that haven't worked. You have to be okay with who you are at your core. Yeah. And not be attached to what other people think about it.
I love that you've picked me up on that because I agree. It's combination of knowing who you are and having the courage to be who you are. So I talked about earlier how I was always a chameleon. Authenticity or being real is one of the most important kind of drivers for me personally now, because I didn't have a voice. I didn't allow my true voice to speak out. Right. I allowed the right voice to speak out.
Right.
So I did well in lots of different areas and things are good, but I didn't always feel I could really show up as me. Right. So you need the emotional intelligence to know kind of what's going on. Yeah. But the authenticity is then showing up in a way that's
it gives
for you.
Other people permission to be authentic too, right?
Yeah.
I was recently speaking at a team day training session, and I was telling the story about, I don't always tell it, depends, it just happens to be that it was relevant to what we were talking about, but I was talking about Sue and the fact that she'd been sick and she'd had a brain injury, and I was just talking about that, not in a long detailed way, but just I was talking about the challenges that come with looking after people who because who need help and treatment and might have nervousness or might be those kind of things, which she sort of deals with. And I was just talking about how we'd had to learn to manage that. Yeah. And what was really interesting was I didn't really think anything of it other than that. I was just talking about it because it was like, look, I can relate to what you're trying to do in the business you're in, and you're dealing with people who are in a lot of kind of like very scared situations and all of those things. And I was just trying to say, look, I can empathize with that, and this is why. And at the coffee break, somebody came up to me who, very in the business was perceived very high, sort of like high up in the business, and they just came to me and said, "I just want to thank you for sharing that story." And I was like, "Yeah, of course. It's I'm here to help the team, and if it helps the team, then great." And he said, "No, you don't understand." And he said, "My wife had a brain injury," and he said, "Very few people here know that." Wow. And he said, "And we were weeks away from divorce, and it was a horrific time, and I don't think I've ever met anyone else who's been through it who would understand how I would have felt." And he said, "You're the first person who would understand what I would have been through." Yeah. And I just said to him, "Yeah, I get it." And I said, "You can't. No one's going to understand what that was like for you, because you weren't the sick one. You weren't the one dealing with the challenge, but you were the one dealing with the downstream impact of that brain injury." Mm. And he was, we had a long conversation over coffee and stuff, and he just shared some of his stuff he'd struggled with. And afterwards, I was talking to the owner of the business, and he said, "Yeah, I didn't really understand the impact that I'd had until I heard him talking to you. So I'd never really shared that with me, and I just thought that's really interesting, isn't it? Because I just chose to share it from a place of I think it will serve someone in the room, and it will serve the narrative of what we're trying to communicate the day about. How do we create customer experiences where people feel safe and feel heard and feel those, really kind of cared for, right? And I think if you're okay with being authentic and not having an attachment to the judgment either way, good or bad, by the way. And I just think afterwards, I reflected that on the train on the way home, and I thought, wow, I wonder how many people he's even been able to have a conversation with in the last 5 years, because it happened to him 5 years ago.
Wow.
Where someone could go, look at it. I get what you've been through.
That's the power of community again, and communication, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's true in a team too.
Yeah.
I think, a team is a community.
Yeah.
And if you're a leader of a team, you are the custodian of that community.
Yeah.
Actually, your job is to protect it.
I agree. Yeah.
And if someone in the business is toxic, your job is to remove that person to protect the culture and the community. And if you're not prepared to do that, then the community won't trust you as a leader. And I think we're all more isolated, but at the same time, we all crave to be more in a community more at the minute.
We really crave reality. We crave real connection. And I think this is why something like a podcast, like we're having right now, is so electric for people, because we don't have a script. We're not following a script. We don't know what either of us are going to say next.
You said stuff I had no clue you were going to talk about today.
And I have no idea what I'm going to say. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. Neither of us did, because. No. But if we followed a script, it wouldn't be interesting or exciting. And showing up without a script and without even an agenda sometimes, but just sort of saying, let's just see what comes up and just stay with it, being present. Is something that is becoming rarer and rarer, and that is authenticity. It's having conversations and being real in the moment, and just to see what comes up, and following the stuff that we're both passionate about, which is something around both business growth and human growth and potential.
Completely. Yeah, because I think personal development, the personal development side of business is underrated massively. Your business is a reflection of you, and it will challenge you, and it will highlight all of the areas that you need to grow as a leader, as a person, as a human being. And it's the best personal development course you'll ever take, but you have to be open to it. And 9 times out of 10, when a business is stuck or stalling or has hit a scale-up ceiling, it's because the owner or the entrepreneur or the founder has stopped investing in themselves. They've stopped growing. It's like I can tell. If I'm on a discovery call with somebody, I'll always ask them, like, do you listen to podcasts? And if it's no, I'm like, okay. Do you read book? What was the last book you read? Oh, I don't read books. Okay, well, if you're not reading books and leading, it's already going to set the relationship. It's going to be a harder relationship because you're not even bought into the idea of developing yourself. So suddenly I've now got to sell you on 2 things. I've got to sell you on the fact that you need to change and develop yourself. Yeah. And then secondly, I'm going to need to sell you on what we need to do to change the business. Yeah. Whereas if you're already bought into that, look, I'm already attending, I attend seminars, or I listen to podcasts, or I read books, or, I'm learning that way. I've already bought into the concept that I need to get better. Yeah. So now I'm just actually looking for you to show me what I need to learn next to be able to grow myself and the team and the business to the next level. And it's a really interesting, just the people who move the fastest get the best results in our community are the people who already have that mindset of, I'm not the finished article. Yes. I've got so much to learn, and I've already been doing this 10 years.
That's the growth mindset rather than the fixed mindset.
Yeah, 100%.
But also, it in particular, over and above books, which can be edited and structured. I mean, this is a live podcast, so we're having a live conversation.
Yep, not edited here.
Not edited, and then over and above that is the literal experience of being in the same room and in the same space as other people, like you were saying, sitting in the hot tub at your retreats. Tenerife, people might be sitting there having a.
So, do you know the other thing I think as to why retreats work is because, and this is just my theory, but I'm pretty sure we run them for 11 years now. So my theory is, if you go to a conference in the UK, and I know you're speaking at one in Mauritius, or like generally, by and large, might be different in Mauritius, but generally by and large, Maldives. Sorry, the Maldives.
I'll go to the Mauritius too.
Next. No, there's one after that, right? So, but generally, if you turn up at a conference in the UK, everyone's in a suit or some kind of business dress, right?
Yeah.
And it might be smart casual, but it's still some. I always think that's a uniform, right? On some level, you put a uniform on, and because you do that, you put a certain identity on.
Yeah.
If you're sat in the hot tub in your shorts, right, you're raw and you're real and you're absolutely 100% who you are.
Yeah.
And therefore, you don't have all of that armor on an unconscious level. You don't. And therefore, people are way more vulnerable and way more trusting in other people.
Open. And it's a live conversation. It's back to a live experience. And this is, so we've only got to the A of authenticity. It's taken us a while to get around this model. So, but live, being live, being real, being vulnerable, not being covered up.
Yep. But that's why I think it works on retreat.
Yeah.
When we do retreats, people come away from that and people say that changed my life. And I'm like, and I thought for a long time trying to unpack what were the elements that made that work. One is we're near nature because we're in a hotel that overlooks the sea, so there's definitely that. Two is the community element.
Yeah.
Big time other people bursting your bubbles about limiting belief.
Yeah.
3, getting out of your environment and being somewhere where none of your stories travel, because once you get on an airplane, you tend to leave your stories behind.
Yeah.
And then the final element is that you don't show up with the same kind of armor that you show up with normally to your meetings and the way you turn up here. If you're in shorts and a t-shirt and a flip-flop, interestingly, the holiday version of you shows up, which is a lot more relaxed and therefore a lot more open to the input.
Open to dreaming and open to potential.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. So the final one, I just want to add in this amazing study called the Framington Heart Study.
No, go for it.
So this is just shows the influence of community.
Okay.
So they were looking at people who'd had heart attacks, and they looked at all their social connections, all the people that they were connected to, and they evaluated them. Do they smoke? What's their body mass index? Other lifestyle choices. They looked at their lifestyles of all their things, and they found that even if somebody 2 steps, so what you'd find is you get these big areas of everybody would be obese in one area, and everybody would smoke, and there'd be links. So if one person stopped smoking who was 2 links away, it would have a massive influence on the likelihood of that person stopping smoking.
Right.
So, or if somebody lost weight who was 1 connection or 2 connections, I can't remember the exact figures off the top of my head.
Read the study, I think.
But the thing that's so amazing is when somebody that is in our direct line changes their lifestyle, stops drinking, I don't know, it could be anything, gets married, there are all sorts of lifestyle changes. You're much more likely to do it. We're so influenced by the people around us.
That can happen negatively too. I've seen that, by the way.
Positively and negatively.
I've seen a group where one person got divorced and you could literally watch dominoes go around the room and suddenly 4 or 5 other people all did it in the same year. And you're like, whoa.
That's it, yeah.
I remember us going, what have we done? What have we done? And I don't think we'd done anything differently because I'm pretty sure we hadn't. And it was just one person had the courage to do it.
Yeah, it legitimizes
4 other people who obviously were really unhappy suddenly went, well, if they can do it, I can do it.
Just like if somebody starts taking, somebody started using heroin at other people around them.
Stuff.
Like it. Yeah, you go back, it can go right, you go wrong. And it's the same in business. Somebody starts breaking a million turnover threshold, someone else breaks 5 million, everybody's going, oh, that's possible, that person doing it, that's whatever the thresholds are. So this is just and I think it was Jim Rohn that said we're influenced by the 5 people we spend most time with.
Totally true.
To our our morals, our ethics, our earning power, everything, and that he got that probably from that Framington Heart Study, which was just showed this huge influence. Anyway.
No, but I think there's a really important piece as a leader here where you need to be intentional. Going back to that because it's a theme that's kind of run through the whole of this. You need to be intentional about who you spend time around.
Yes, you
because
do.
It is critical and it will define the future you create.
And then you can expect the results you want.
Yeah, totally right. If you hang out with people who label themselves as small business owners, then you're going to end up playing small. Yeah. And that's what, and I absolutely is you want to hang out with people who are playing a bigger game, who are stretching the boundaries of what's possible, and who are going to challenge you to go, well,
because it becomes
if John
normal.
and
It's normal,
Jane
isn't it?
can, why can't you? And it's that whole kind of thing of like, if you can see it, you can be it.
Yeah.
But if you're hanging around people who are, listen, this is no disrespect to anybody at any level, but if you're hanging around a lot of people who are micro businesses, then you're going to play a micro game.
That's it.
And until you get around, people who are playing a grown-up business game and scaling up and doing that, and then that's the game you're playing, you have to be, I think this is a really important thing I think I've learned about leadership, is you have to be clear on the game you're playing.
Right.
Because I think sometimes as leaders, we compare ourselves to other people who are not playing the same game. They're not. And then we go, I'm not as good as so-and-so. Yeah, but they're playing a different game. Like they might be playing scale and exit.
Yeah.
You're playing scale, you're playing build and lifestyle.
Right.
Nothing wrong with either version, by the way. They're both absolutely brilliant models. They just need to be your model. But if you're comparing yourself with the person who's building and scaling for exit, and making 20 million or whatever the number is, and you're building for lifestyle, then you're going to build it differently. And therefore, you're going to look very differently in how you do it and how you show up and what you're doing.
Decisions you make. Yeah.
Decisions you make.
Yeah.
So stop comparing yourself with someone who's not playing the game you're playing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
But we were also talking about just the norms in a community and just how.
Yeah.
And so you get around the right people, but get around the people who are doing the stuff that you're.
Yeah. I remember the first time I was in a room with Becky and we were running a mastermind, and two people in one room talked about the fact that they were shooting for £100 million valuation. Now, nobody had ever said that before. Two people both said it in the room, and it was like there was a frequency shift in the room, because suddenly you could feel everyone else go, "Oh, are we allowed to think that big? Are we?" And what had happened is I'd brought in a mentor, Simon, incredible guy, who'd built a £100 million business, and he just was sitting in the room going, "Well, if I can, why are you lot not doing this?" And it was like, and then by the end of the day, sort of somehow 100 million had become normalised as like, well, of course, we're all going to be thinking like that. Now, no, whether everyone does or doesn't wasn't the point. It was just there was this sudden acceptance of, so we have permission to do that. We're okay to do that then, right? If we want to think that big, it's all right. Yeah. And I think sometimes as leaders, we can go, culturally, I'm not allowed to think that big. And then you need to spend time around people who go, well, yeah, but you're just thinking of a local business in the UK. What about if you thought about taking your business global? Okay, I hadn't even thought about that. Like it's that, and you don't get that unless you're clear on, you hang out with people who've got a result that is above what you've achieved already.
So then the last one, the L, the legacy, it's kind of the counterbalance to the result. So the result is what you would like to achieve, and then the legacy is the impact you'd like to leave for other people.
Right.
So it's the end game. So you've got a vision up front, and then you've got what you leave behind and your impact. So this is also about serving something greater than yourself as well. What's the legacy you want to leave? Why are you doing all of this? It's for you, it's for other people, but what do you want to do that only you can do? You're the only person, because of your particular unique upbringing, stories, understanding of who you are and how the world works. You are the only person that can do it in your particular way. Yeah. And that's part of the authenticity piece as well, is just sort of embracing that you are the only unique version of you, with your idiosyncrasies, not you, but everybody's, your particular style and way of seeing the world. And that's so valuable. AI doesn't have that. AI is like a beige pot where, we're
entering that phase, aren't we, where bland has become the norm.
Yes.
And, you might have seen it outside. I have a purple car. If I turn up in a car park, every time I drive around a car park, I'm like, it just makes me smile, because they're all basically four colours most of the time. It's white, grey, black. Like they're the three main colours of most of the cars. Occasionally you see the odd red one. And I'm like, wow, where does everyone just, like, we've conformed down to even that level of, like, to stand out actually, as just do something different now. It's not really, it's not massively different, but it's because we seem to be in this age of blandness, which I actually think is the opportunity for you as an entrepreneur to go, actually it's even easier to stand out if I'm really authentic and I'm really clear about who I am and what I stand for, and I'm okay with that. Yes. Then I can stand out. Yeah. Right.
It doesn't need bells and whistles. You just stand out by just because we are slightly
real,
flawed.
because you're being real.
Yeah, and we're slightly, and that makes us slightly interesting, because we're all slightly skewy. None of us are. There's no such thing as a sort of like a perfect person. That's a robot.
Yeah.
But we are
perfectly flawed, as you say.
We are. So that's legacy. So that's the real compass. But as a quick one, it's just basically ask yourself, okay, what result do I want in this situation? Like, what am I aiming for here? You're troubled, you're worried.
Would you want to do that every day? That's a question you should ask every day, right?
At the beginning of the day, what result do I want for this? What do I want for this day? Emotional intelligence. Okay, how am I feeling? Check in. How am I feeling? How do I manage that best? How do I show up as my best self?
Yep.
With the awareness that I'm feeling a bit off today, or I'm feeling really excited, or whatever. How do I show up and manage that in the best? How do I optimize where I'm at, and how do I do the same with the other people I encounter?
There's a great question that I use with that, if I may, which is, who needs me to show up as the best version of me today?
Yeah,
that's a grounding question for me, because it's different every day sometimes. But who needs me to show up as the best version of myself? I kind of like that question because it really checks me every day.
That's nice. That's about a who, but if you already know who you're encountering, so with you, I knew I was going to encounter you. So how do I show up as the best person of me? With Paul. Today.
But it just allows me to go, I need to bring that side of me out a bit more today, or I need to dial that side back of me, or if you're on stage speaking, there's a different version that you need to bring out than if we're sitting having this conversation. It's slightly different,
and it's just as authentic, this one. So I think from the emotional intelligence comes that authenticity, like who am I being? So emotional intelligence is how do I show up, but who am I being in this, or like who's the best self? And I loved taking on an identity, like you were saying, what would Branson say in my situation? But who am
just
I? Just
breaks you out of the pattern, doesn't it?
Yeah, and legacy. What's the impact I want to have? So you can ask yourself those 4 questions.
That'll keep you real, then. That'll
keep you in there. There's your compass. Put in your pocket. And
I'm a big fan of compasses, as you know. So I think it's such a brilliant metaphor for navigating your way to being, staying human, being more clear as a leader, and also being effective under pressure, which is, I think, a skill set in itself as a leader. So, brilliant conversation. Totally love it. Love the model. Thank you so much for sharing it. Let's wrap up by just going then, what's your view of, as a leader, what do you how do you see a grown-up, what's your definition of a grown-up business?
Oh, well, I like you used being a grown-up business just in something you said just then. And I think it is we were talking about being authentic, but it is getting to that place where you lead from knowing who you are. Your business allows, or you allow for we talked about having all your experts, your leadership team, you allow everybody to be who they are. You can allow that, you can deal with it.
Yeah, true.
And so everybody in the business is able to work optimally as who they are, and to drive that business forward. And of course, it's got all the structures and the systems in place. You're not afraid of any of those things, and you're not afraid of the things that go wrong in the market. You
walk in faith, not in fear, right?
Walk in faith, not in fear. Yeah, but you're not blind to it. You're not blind to the
risks.
The risks. Yeah, you definitely see the risks.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's being grown up. I think and that's the perfectly flawed thing as well. It's being grown up to not be deluded and just go, everything's really great, and I'm going to, I'm going to hit this next target, and hit this next target, but what are some of the challenges along the way, and how can you prevail through those?
Yeah. What's the next challenge for you? What are you next? What's your next challenge?
I think it's bringing my Real Leadership program, which is a CPD program, out through a lot of growth businesses and SMEs. I've worked in corporates a lot with it, but it's taking it through businesses that are growing and more agile, to show how that real leadership
interesting
can make its difference.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything that I can do to help and the community can do to help, then we're right behind you. We look forward to seeing you at some of our other events, I'm sure, later in the next year or so. But if you haven't grabbed a copy of Your Leadership Story, it is absolutely brilliant. I was going to ask you about, there was a piece thing I was going to ask you about, and we just haven't had the time. But maybe we'll do that another time in terms of the there's a leadership tool here, which I think is really, really brilliant for anyone. So we'll drop a link below, show notes to that. Deborah, thanks ever so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute privilege to have you here today.
Absolute pleasure to be here as well. Thanks so much, Paul.
You're welcome. And listen, remember, if you haven't checked out any of our resources lately, we'll drop the links below. Keep going, keep growing, and we'll see you on the next show. That concludes this episode of the Grown Up Business Podcast. I hope that got you fired up and ready to grow. The key thing, though, is to remember you get paid on what you get done. So write down the top 3 actions from this show and make sure that you implement those in the next 72 hours. Hey, and while you're at it, make sure you click the links and the resources below this episode to claim free growth resources to help you build the business you desire and deserve. I'll see you on the next episode.